Hello and welcome to today's WIEF I Empower on eWallet Embracing a Cashless Transformation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me first introduce our moderator for today. She is Mazlita Madhassan. She is the founder and CEO of Unoya Sindran Berhad, an edutech startup where they build a platform called Reka. Reka was deployed by Malaysia Ministry of Education, named as Ruang Ilmu on Delima as a national knowledge sharing platform for teachers nationwide. She also co-founded Recite, an Al-Quran recital validation app. Mazlita is a member of the E-Trade for Women communities and is a sought-after corporate IT trainer. She is passionate about upskilling, educating and getting more women into IT and innovation, and has a vast experience training in data analytics and data visualizations and data storytelling. Now, please welcome Mazlita Madhassan.
Hi, thank you to Madam Chairperson. Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, eWallet Embracing a Cashless Transformation, brought by the World Islamic Economic Forum Foundation, WIEF. Okay, as mentioned, my name is Mazlita Madhassan, but people normally call me Maz. And the aim of the webinar today is to provide a platform for us to come together to discuss and share diverse perspectives on the topic and to also explore the prospect and opportunity for all of us in using eWallet for future businesses and consumers worldwide. Today, we will explore practical issues and challenges of adopting digital payment methods in the current competitive environment and how entrepreneurs could capture this new market and reshape the payment industry that might ultimately lead to a cashless global society. I am honored to be invited to moderate this session today in the presence of 4 esteemed speakers. And if you notice, all our speakers are women and hashtag girl power. I'm sure everyone have access to their magnificent biography. So I will just do a short introduction of all of them one by one. First up, we have Ungku Nurliza, the CEO of Boost Life Malaysia, the leading digital lifestyle app in Malaysia. Boost is the fintech arm of Axiata. Welcome, Ungku Liza. Next, we have Krisma Albanja, who is the Vice Treasury to Indonesia Fintech Association, AFTech. Welcome, Krisma. Next, we also have Arushi Jain, an Associate Director in the Payment Transformation Practice under Financial Services Advisory at PwC India. It's almost about 8 o'clock plus in the morning in India. Welcome, Arushi. Thank you for being with us today. And last but not least, we also have Hazlin Abdul Rani, who is the Head of Cryptography Development at Cyber Security Malaysia. Welcome, Hazlin. Right, so everyone, let me explain a bit on the structure of our webinar today. The first 45 minutes, we will do question and answer with our panelists. I will ask questions and we'll have our esteemed panelists to answer them. And for the audience, if you have any questions you want to ask at any given time, please use the Q&A box on your Zoom panel and submit the question there. And after the main session finish, I will then pick several questions if you have the time for our panelists to answer and discuss. Just to remind that everyone, time is our enemy today, and we hope to finish at this session by 12 p.m. Okay, so without further ado, let me start with the first question. The pandemic has really accelerated digitalization. In the era of COVID-19 and social distancing, adopting a cashless payment system that is secure, convenient, and also speedy makes so much sense. But how have eWallet evolved according to this acceleration? Perhaps Ungku Liza, you could be the first one to answer this question.
Wow, privilege. Thank you, Mas. Hi, distinguished panel as well as friends and also the audience that joining us today. First of all, is my audio okay? Mas?
Yes, yes, it's okay.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, so pertaining to your question, I guess before I straight away answer that, maybe I could share some personal experience as well in our journey with the Boost team, right? So even before the pandemic, Boost is eWallet, as you rightly introduced, thank you, Mas, started our operation back in 2017. In 2018, 2019, we were aggressive acquiring customers and also the touch point merchants to create this complete ecosystem of a cashless society. So what happened during those years, we were challenging each other internally, right? Myself and the team saying, okay, if we believe that we have done a good job, let's test and see whether or not we can survive without cash for a week. So 1 month in a week, we were trying and challenging ourselves. And you know what? It actually worked. And this was like 4 or 5 years ago. Of course, going back to your question, fast forward with pandemic actually accelerated this growth, right? Eventually. And even today, Mas, I don't know about you and the panelists here, or even the audience, I don't carry cash anymore, right? And it shows how the adoption of cashless in terms of our day-to-day is very much as part of our life. So that's one, and just sharing that a bit, right? Secondly, I think under a macro environment, you can also see a lot of statistics shows how the aggressiveness of the adoption. First of all, I think there's some stats from our Ministry of Finance as well, showing a registered mode into eWallet QR has increased more than 60% year on year, right? If you compare that from 2021 to 2020. And then in 2021 itself, we saw e-wallet or cashless transaction, particularly e-wallet, has gone up to about 2 billion transactions for the year, right? And then another point of study at a macro level also shows that a customer that uses e-wallet actually use more than 95% in a monthly transaction. And the frequency of that transaction actually increases from 10.5 in the past to about 17 times now. So that's macro. How does it affect e-wallet internally as well? What we've seen, our GTV has grown about 25% year on year in terms of the adoption. GTV is gross transaction value, basically the transaction that uses the form of e-wallet. We recorded a strong 5 billion year-on-year growth on GTV. And within that GTV transaction, the online payment itself has shown about 60%. So to answer your question, summarizing it, I think pandemic definitely accelerated. Before the pandemic, those that's in the industry is already adopting the cashless behavior. It's only going to go up and positive moving forward, Maz.
Thank you, Uncle Liza, for that answer. I mean, true, yes, I don't carry cash much nowadays. Everything, you just carry your phone, right? I mean, if there's no phone, that's it. All right, let us go to Krisma. Krisma, let's hear your answer to that.
So in Indonesia, definitely COVID-19 pandemic has been an agent of change, which has, among others, altered the way people interact with one another. And this pandemic also increased the need for low-touch economy. So in Indonesia, we can see that there is a rapid increase in fintech adoption. Well, probably we can call that a good news from our point of view, because that's accelerate the way people are actually doing digital payment. And the utilization, if you can see that Bank Indonesia reports that e-money transaction in May 2022 more than doubled, increased from 145 million Indonesian 145 million to 393 million. So more than double that actually using this e-money transaction. And secondly, which is also a good news for us, is that it has become one of the most important components in supporting a lot of Indonesia's economic recovery, including disbursement of government programs to ease the pain of the pandemic. So, for example, like a lot of assistance programs, just take as an example is Kartu Prakerja. Basically, Kartu Prakerja is a program for people who are losing their job and wants to learn more or have some skill upgraded. So the digital payment has been used to channel the government funds to help those job seekers, workers, and laborers who've been laid off. So that's some of the benefits that we got, or the good, the good upside of the pandemic for for Indonesia. So the benefit of digital payments, including eWallet, has brought one of the solutions for economic recoveries, which actually shows that it will definitely going to continue grow in the futures. So we are looking forward for more use of digital wallet now. It is part of our life now.
Thank you, Chris. Let's hear from Arushi, because you're from India. Is there anything that you can share how eWallet has evolved in your country? Please.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maslita, for the question. And I think I completely echo the thoughts that Krisma and Unko just mentioned. The pandemic has definitely acted as a big catalyst. And, to give a perspective, March 2020, when the pandemic started, we were at about 40 million wallet transactions in a month, which doubled in April 2020 within a matter of 1 month, and which moved another 5 times to about 450 million in the next year, April 2021. And today we are again sitting upwards of 500 million per month, right? So we'll be touching about 6 billion by the end of the year. So that's the scale at which we are talking about in terms of the overall digital transactions. But there are 2 points that I want to highlight here in terms of how I see this wallet ecosystem evolving, given these huge, exponential rise in volumes, which were not anticipated. Let's say, it was always growing steadily, but this exponential volume has led to two aspects that have changed, right? So the first one, what I want to point out is the overall revenue drivers in this industry, or the overall business models, right? So how players are looking at making money here today, right? So apart from just the transaction fee, the fee income, that's typically how players make money. They've started looking at alternate models on how they can offer value-added services, how they can offer integrated solutions to a merchant, right? And I don't know if it's similar across the world, but in a lot of countries like in Southeast Asia, what we've seen, India included, is the wallet companies, they offer integrated solutions like a bookkeeping services to smaller merchants, right? Invoicing solutions to smaller merchants, right? And that along with the payment mode. So that's how they're looking at making money apart from just the fee income, right? So that's one area. Then how do they utilize this humongous amount of data? They're building metrics out of it. They're entering alternate channels like BNPL, like lending, right? So those alternate business models have really evolved. That's one area of change that I have seen, right? The other area of change that I want to highlight is on the use cases. So traditionally, we saw, the wallet ecosystem being dominated by personal use cases or B2C use cases, which also started off by, let's say, just limited value cards, which could be used for secure purchases at certain areas, that then evolved to P2P transfers, utility transfers, transit payments, which we are seeing right now. And, more evolving, but still at a nascent stage are use cases like school fees, mutual fund, insurance payments. But more likely now what I'm seeing is there would be a huge movement, a trend towards, B2B payments or business payments. A lot of use cases would evolve around that is what I see. That's how I have seen personally the wallet industry evolving in the light of the pandemic.
Thank you very much to Arushi, Krisma, and Okuliza. I do agree. I think the point on the alternate business model has evolved. I think that's a good point, because as a startup like me, those are the things that we also have to look into now, how to grow our revenue. Okay, let us go to the second question, which is when adopting e-wallet system into the digital economy, there are many issues that we have to deal with, such as cybersecurity. So here the question is, what are the issues, what are the risks, and what are the threats in the global cyber security of mobile payment and digital wallet? And is there any support or policy that are already in place and will be in place to deal with this? I think for this one, let's start with Hazlin, because she's at the cyber security, and then after that we can go to the next panel. Silakan, please, Hazlin.
Okay, thank you, Mas, for the question. Okay, actually there's a lot of threats involving the e-wallets, yeah. Especially now everything is on digital, and everything, the e-wallet is, we rely mostly on our phone or mobile phones, yeah. But the threat is not only for the users perspective, but also on the mobile device and also the merchants and also the developers or the owner of the e-wallet apps. So I just want to talk about on the user's perspective and also the mobile device lah. Right. So on the user's perspective, we are always getting like scam calls, or we always have like phishing or the social engineering attack. Okay, for example, in for phishing attacks, usually the attacker they phishing via email. I mean they attach some malware or a trojan, okay, to your email, and then unconsciously maybe you click the email and then you have installed the malware. So it can compromise your mobile phone, where the malware maybe perhaps gather all your data, including your login credential to your e-wallets and other application, of course. So it compromise your e-wallet. Okay, but how to protect yourself from this phishing attack is to be vigilant. Okay, when downloading your apps from unknown source, okay, you have to make sure that it is the legit application, or maybe when you access to websites, make sure that the URL is the correct URL. Okay, for social engineering, perhaps this is maybe we are not really aware when sometimes we're not aware that we are being attacked by social engineering. For example, maybe the cyber criminals call you, okay, and then ask you some question, maybe, but they impose from some legal entities. For example, maybe from the police or from the in Malaysia we call it LHDN, right? Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, the tax officers, and then they will ask you some questions like what is your name, what is your IC, what is your identification number, what is your mobile number, your address, and so on. So they will use this information to access your login name or your password. Okay, they can derive this information to get that access. Okay, and also another thing is that in the mobile side, okay, sometimes we unintentionally install or malware applications, or sometimes we give an permission to this application to access our data in the phone. Okay, and then sometimes the when they have access to the data in the phone, then they can maybe perhaps some way or other they can access your login credential to your e-wallet or your digital wallet. Okay, so that is the thing that you have to look at. And then maybe the things that you have to ensure is that for the protection of your mobile is to install to use a password. Okay, enable your device password, and make sure that you did not use the same password for your application and your e-wallet. I mean, because e-wallet is contain our money, right? Our hard-earned money. So we have to make sure that it's perfectly secure. So I will strongly advise that you use a different password for your e-wallet, and also a different password for any other application. Okay, maybe also on the developer side, they can add in another features called two-factor authentication. Okay, so instead of maybe to use the e-wallet, instead of just key in your password or key in the PIN number, maybe you can add in the biometric, okay, to make it secure, so that no one else can use your e-wallet application other than yourself. Okay, and then also the threat of public Wi-Fi. Okay, when you use public Wi-Fi, there's a possibility to for an attacker to conduct and man in the middle attacks. Okay, meaning that when you want to transfer or you want to do a transaction, okay, if you using a public Wi-Fi, and especially when you connected to the unauthorized public, I mean maybe they impersonate the real network name. For example, maybe you are in an airport, okay, so they set up their own wireless point, where they use, like for example, maybe in the airport they use airport 1, so you use the name airport 2 and you connected to the airport 2. So unconsciously you are connected to the attacker's Wi-Fi. So during your transaction, okay, they can gather all the information. They can gather your login name, your password, and also your account name actually. So this it is important that you are using a secure network connection. Okay, avoid public Wi-Fi when you want to do any transaction, especially involving e-wallet. Okay. I think other things that you have to look at, and in the thread is on the point of sale. I mean on the merchant side. Okay, because when you want to use the e-wallet, usually we scan our QR code. Okay, or maybe the merchant or the POS system that scan our QR code from the phone, and then but we have to make sure that the POS system is secure. I mean, they have an encryption, end-to-end encryption using the transaction so that the information, the data is secured. Okay, it's encrypted and nobody can access to the data. So
I think, yeah, thank you, Hazlin, for that very long and comprehensive thread. And then what can we do to actually overcome it? Right, maybe I can also pass this question to Unku Liza.
Thanks, Mas. I was about to say, Mas, can I just say something as well in terms of cyber? I think the cyber threat has always been there, right? It's not new. It's just because the accelerated progress on the digital payment, actually now that becomes the one of the most important topics, right? That we need to address. If you realize internet banking has been there also before e-wallet, right? And there was threat when we were transacting online. That's the reason why when it was first introduced, people were skeptical. Hey, can I do transaction online? Even my husband didn't want to do it. He actually queued at the bank, right? Because of the trust issue. But actually, what we can do, for me, maybe I view it in two parts, right? Number one, what can we do as a service provider and a player in this industry? And that's why I guess in this industry, it's highly regulated industry, right? So as a regulatee, we have the responsibility not only to our regulators, but also most importantly to the public to make sure that the services that we offer has the utmost security as much as possible according to the guidelines and the governance and the requirements of the regulators, right? In fact, I think there's a lot of progress in terms of how does regulator and players come into play together. For example, in Malaysia, maybe Arushi can touch a bit what's happening in India, but in Malaysia, we've got a guidelines recently issued, I think 2 years ago in 2020, the RMIT guideline, right, which touch about how can players in financial institution, be it banking, be it Islamic banking, electronic issuer, e-wallet issuer, needs to make sure that their IT environment and infrastructure is safe enough for transactions to happen, right? That's one. From a player perspective, regulation perspective, I think they are progressive and we are progressive, and there are steps taken to strengthen, right, this view. The other view, I really do think, and it's also one of the critical view to ensure that how do we combat this together, is the consumer end, right? How do we educate the consumer? How do we make sure that everyone is aware that what data are you transmitting? You know, is this security site safe enough for you? Is this a scammer trying to phish your information? So I think public awareness and education is also critical to make this happen together, right? It cannot just be either the player or it cannot just be education to consumer. So it has to be, you know, both ends, right? So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Uncle Liza, for that. Actually, that brings us to the next question, which is about, of course, some people still believe cash is king and they don't trust digital payment, which Uncle Liza already said, that the husband are queuing somewhere and whatnot.
He will kill me. He will kill me for that.
And then actually, according to a research done by Nielsen Malaysia, which was published in 2019, they reported that security and privacy are significant issues that's being reported as barriers for the adoption of eWallet.
Yeah.
So I want to then extend this question because I think Hazlin and also Unku Liza already answered that. But perhaps maybe Chris and also Arushi can share with us what's happening in your country when it comes to securing, when it comes to the security of e-wallets and also digital payment. Please.
Great. Thanks.
So
Thanks,
Arushi
Maz.
can start first. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Maz. So I think I definitely agree there on Unku's thoughts. It's a two-way street, right? The regulators have to be very agile, because the hackers are getting really intelligent, right? As we are evolving, and those technologies, the fraudster technologies are evolving. So the regulators have to act in a very agile manner, even if it sometimes means, taking orthodox measures. Like sometime back in India, the RBI said they brought in data localization norms. So even companies like Visa, Mastercard, everyone, they had to put their data on soil, and anybody who had their data residing outside of the country was not allowed, right? So I think those kind of situations also arise where a regulator has to take a hard call, right? Another step that the central bank has taken here is put the onus on banks for customer education, right? So India uses two-factor authentication for every payment. There has to be a two-factor authentication. One would be your PIN or a biometric authentication that you do, and other would be an OTP that you receive on your phone, right? So the onus is on the banks to educate their customers on how not to share their OTPs outside to anybody, right? And how that happens. So the RBI has set guidelines, and they review every bank on what steps are they taking on educating their customers. What Hazleen mentioned about phishing attacks, on malwares, banks are regularly, they send out emailers and they're conducting workshops with their customers on educating them. Suppose that there's a leading bank, let's say ABC Bank, and sometimes there are email IDs which start with, let's say, a small b or a capital C, which is not really aligned to what the actual email ID of the bank is. The banks are definitely taking a lot of measures in that direction, I would say, to educate customers. So that's definitely a very important area. Another thing I want to allude towards is how also to make the customer feel very comfortable, and how that's happening is, especially in India, and I'm sure a lot of other countries would also have this problem, is not everybody speaks the same language, right? There are differences, specific nuances in the languages that people speak, and which is very diverse in India. So players are coming up with apps in regional languages, which people are more comfortable with, which makes them feel more comfortable and alleviates those security concerns if they're able to feel more comfortable, more connected to the app. Also, figuring out what are those country specific or region specific nuances, like some countries in India, or let's say the financial literacy is very high, much higher than the overall literacy rate. So how do you play on that? So there are apps designed which use minimal language but just play on numbers and pictures. People are able to relate better. The information is transmitted in a much better manner, which people can relate to, right? So those are some aspects which I feel have really contributed in elevating some of these concerns and making people more comfortable towards the use of digital wallets, or I would say digital payments as a whole.
Yeah. In Indonesia, currently, Indonesia National Cyber and Encryption Agency indicate that 24% cyber attacks that happened in 2021 is within the financial sector. So 70% were targeted towards banking, 16% toward insurance, and 14% towards other financial sectors. So in general, there has been a significant increase of cyber personal data protection, money laundering and terrorism funding, third-party service utilization, including illegal online P2P lending during this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic for the last 2 years. So that's pretty significant numbers that we can see here. And currently, Indonesia is at the moment of waiting the finalization and issuance of our own personal data protection as well as cybersecurity laws. So personal data protection is key for us because that's where people will actually believe that if you give this all the data or some data that we ask, then they will give it because they trust us with their data. So the issuance of the law of personal data protection is key for us. However, we do not want people to become discouraged because of this risk, right? I mean, it has been a very good way of people learning how to use digital wallet, how to take the positive side of it. So we don't want to discourage them. That's why, despite all the absence of those laws, as a association, AFTA continues our commitment to ensure that digital finance innovation within its member will actually carry it out responsibly and prioritize the consumer protection. So what we do is that we issue numbers of code of conduct documents to implement by its members, including that one, personal data protection, digital finance innovation, aggregator, innovative credit scoring, and financial planner. So we are emphasizing on the enhancement of government risk and compliance among fintech industry players. So this responsible should be carried by all players. So the players, the government, the people, because, you know, we cannot expect the law to come like really early, right? Because they learn how to do it, and then there are process that we have to bear with. So that's why, as an association, we actually would like to we try to have this code of conduct to help our players to maintain the trust for their customers. So that's what we do in Indonesia. Hopefully, we will have that personal data protection law within this year. Next year is the most, so that we will be able to conduct some of the protection for our customers, so we don't lose their trust. I think the trust is key for us now to maintain the use of digital wallet.
Thank you, Chris, Arushi, and also Uncle Liza. I think the conclusion from that question is all about everybody working together. It's not just the government, but the user and also the app provider, whatever not, has to then be responsible and then work together to ensure the safety. And also, like Chris says, it's all about putting trust into the customer. Okay, let us go to the next one. I think this is quite a good question, especially some people, not just like us, stay in the city and have access to a lot of things. Ensuring financial inclusion for the future is always an ongoing challenge for the global merchant, because you try to expand, you try to largen your user base. So how can eWallet provide alternative payment options for the underbanked consumers? So as we know, in Indonesia, there's a lot of people who's underbanked, and also in India as well. So perhaps this is something, I think in Malaysia, probably it's not too prevalent, but I'm sure this is something that we also want to tackle. So I actually open this to anyone, who wants to share first.
I can share a little bit about this, because this digital e-wallets is being used in Indonesia now widely because of the QR Indonesian standard, Chris. So people are starting using Chris as their payment right now instead of cash. So if people are still paying cash, everybody will say, why do you need cash, right? I mean, like, cash is king, but still now we see that it's actually being reduced. So for those who doesn't have access to banks, they can use this, and the apps can be used with this CRIS, QR Indonesian standard, even though they don't have access to banks, because they can actually use their e-wallet as their main safe, because they are actually using it in their daily transactions. So e-wallets enable customers to make payments, store funds, transfer money to other user financial accounts, so that it actually helps them. And secondly, the credit scoring is also key for us. So the credit scoring given by the e-wallets provider will actually help them to access banks fund or loans as well. So e-wallets doesn't replace banks roles, but actually it extends them. So that's the most important thing. So banks for us is our partners. So we are not threat to the bank. We are the extension of those banks because of some of the challenges they may have. Then we have a more lenient and more comfortable way of for our customers. So in this case, we can see that banks and e-wallet providers are actually working together. So Chris is one of the an example that works in Indonesia.
I think, Mas, if you don't mind, me chirping in as well. Is that okay?
Sure. Go ahead, Unku.
Yeah, sure. Go on.
Sorry, Aru. Is that okay? No, I actually was trying to also borrow the point that you started earlier, Aru. It's about how e-wallet trending, what you have seen aside from the adoption that is accelerated, how it's evolving now towards two other branches, right? And one of those that you touch are the value-added services, all right? And for us, Boost, it's how we are now stitching the ecosystem together, right? So we started obviously, Mas, as an e-wallet, right? But it's always within our vision to then create this fintech solution for Malaysia and also regional. That's our aspiration, right? So we started as an e-wallet. We have now about more than 10 million customers, more than 500,000 touch points across merchant. The next question is, what do we do with them, right? And then going back to the DNA of Boost eWallet is all about how do we serve the underserved? How do we include those that is not financially included or the financial inclusion, right? Segment. How do we get them to play within the same territory of the other players? How do we get them to get served with loans and other solutions from the business? So the evolution is, this is how we see it, right? Started as an e-wallet. We now have a consumer base. We have a merchant base, of which actually maybe I can also share. Boost has an offering to the merchants because we have more than 500 merchants already, right? And we've disbursed more than 1 billion ringgit of micro SME loans, right? To help the small businesses to expand their business. And out of this segment, we also further slice and dice and saw that almost 50% of this segment had never been served with financial assistance, right? So we use the alternative credit scoring, as what Anu was saying just now, based on the transaction that we've been seeing, not the complicated way how probably the brick and mortar financial institution would assess their credit worthiness, and hence hand on this loan, and hopefully we'll be able to see them growing their business and support the micro SME for them to grow, right? So it's a different ball game altogether. I think you can see in other parts of the world, India, Paytm, China. I mean, e-wallet is just a basic hygiene to start off, right? It's beyond e-wallet now. It's how do we create that fintech solution that would be able to serve the segments that weren't able to be touched in the past couple of years by the brick and mortar association. Yeah.
Absolutely, Unku. I think that's a very great thought. How do you think of getting the small businesses or MSMEs involved in the financial inclusion segment, right? When we think of financial inclusion, the first thought that comes to everybody's mind is the underbanked retail population, right? Individual customers. But how do you also focus on those small businesses is absolutely important. And as you said, a lot of leading e-wallet players are building such innovative integrated solutions for these SMBs, right? So to quote a few examples, and I think what's important here to note is we can't offer out of box solutions to SMBs or MSMEs. It has to be an integrated platform because they don't have the wherewithal to work with multiple vendors and invest in multiple solutions, which would cost them a lot of money and bandwidth, right? So what's happening is, let's say, e-wallets, a big use case is salary disbursements for MSMEs, right? But how do you integrate that into into one solution? So what players are doing is they're integrating it with the entire payroll solution. So the platform provides attendance management system, your salary disbursements, your expense management, your corporate gifting solutions, everything bundled into one solution, right? So that brings a lot of smaller players on board to such offerings, right? Another example, if I talk about, is the vendor payouts. There's a lot of logistics, shipping, invoice management which happens, and especially in the retail sector, in the e-commerce sector, because they have to work with so many vendors, right? So what's happening is, again, an integrated platform which offers you everything from your managing the trade directories to your invoicing solution. How can you raise invoices, and then managing payments for your even inventory management and analytics around that. So that integrated platform is being sold to businesses, so they see a lot of value in that, right? And another trend from a technology perspective is that these solutions are also moving to cloud now, right? So even if you're a very small business and you can't even afford to do that or take it on a license model, you can always pay per use, depending on how much your volumes are and how much you're willing to use at that point in time. So I think a very valid question, Mas, there, and there's a lot to do around the financial inclusion space still.
Thank you, everyone. That was a really great discussion on financial inclusion. I think we don't have much time because I really want to start taking questions around 11:45. So we have about 3 to 4 minutes left. So what is the future of digital payment? I mean, I've heard about for each one of you talking about, what can be done in terms of alternative business models, in terms of our touch points and whatnot. But if you can conclude about the future, what are the exciting opportunities that you see that we all can expect in the near future? So perhaps we can start this with Chris, and then we can go to everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Rapid fintech industry in this rapid fintech industry development has led Indonesia to become one of the largest fintech ecosystem in Asia Pacific region because of the numbers. Several encouraging factors shows that national fintech industry, including e-wallets, still have large growth potential. So more than 50% adult. I'm going to go through some of the numbers so that it can give you some of the idea about this. More than 50% adults in Indonesia do not have access to financial services. So within this population, more than 60% own mobile phones, have the potential to utilize fintech services. So that's another potential numbers. And as the fourth largest population in the world, more than 60% of its population is in the productive age demographically. So these young people are actually our main users currently. More than 170 million of the population currently is internet users, and majority are active social media users and access the internet using mobile phones. So through these numbers, we can see that we are very positive and optimistic about the numbers. But some things that we have to realize, first of all, is that there's a talent gap. So there's a talent gap, which we need to collaborate between education providers and also companies. So that's what we have to do. Secondly, in increasing gender equality, industry stakeholders have to collaborate, such as increasing awareness and the will for women to participate, encourage the paradigm that both genders are both capable within the fintech industry. So this is not a male industry. This is both gender industry. So that's that's why we would like to put some of the point there. And policymakers have to accommodate various perspectives and prioritize fintech, consumer protection, and collaborate with industry in implementing the GRC principles. And last but not least is actually regulator and industry players to collaborate in developing light touch and safe harbor policy for the industry. So above those points, we are very excited that to see and witness continuous fintech growth and adoption in the future, especially in Indonesia. So we are very optimistic that the digital financial innovations will actually increase the financial inclusion, financial literacy, and also significantly increase the GRC principle implementation within the industry. So that's where I think regulators and industry players should actually significantly do some synergy work. So that's our point of view.
Right. Thank you, Chris. Maybe Uncle Liza, what can we expect? What are the most exciting things that are coming from Boost team in the next,
Okay,
near
thanks,
future?
thanks, Mas. So I wake up every morning feeling like Energizer Bunny on steroids, right? It's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Right? So for us in Boost, I guess as I shared earlier, I think we started obviously as an e-wallet player, but we knew back then also that's not the end game. We were just seeding it and laying the fundamentals and basic principle around it, right? So we now have more than 10 million customer from a consumer, the Boost Life app perspective. And then we've got more than 500,000 merchants that's already in our ecosystem. And I mentioned just now, with these merchants, we are able to also disburse 1 billion worth of loans to all these micro SMEs, right? So what we're trying to do now is trying to stitch all this. And recently, Mas, I don't know whether you've read in the paper, we are also being granted the digital bank license, right? With a consortium with RHB. So it's all properly planned by the Boost team, actually. And now it's just like Anu said, how do we pull everything together? How do we provide an integrated solution, right? To all this, the amazing base and ecosystem that we've built so far. So I guess in short, our aspiration is really in our mind, how do we take Boost with all the assets that we created, with the digital banking license that's been granted, how do we create and how do we become a regional full spectrum fintech player? That's our aspiration. So
Fantastic.
yeah, so anyone that wants to join Boost to create future, please send me resume as soon as possible.
You have 4 very capable people here already.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we kind of like run out of time for our Q&A session with the panelists, the main session. Thank you to panelists. I can see there's a couple of questions coming in, which is really good. And I think most of the questions, the first 3 is related to security. And it says Miss Hazlin. So I'm going to take that and maybe Hazlin can answer this. I can see that people are worried about, of course, we already talked about security. We already talked about trust and whatever. No, but there's a question to say, something to do that. Is there any safer way to, other than 2-factor authentication? Is it voice authentication? And then somebody also asked, when we connect to public Wi-Fi, is it possible the attacker to know about our username or password if the app use SSL? Yeah. So there's also another question again on security. Is there any regulation about security of e-wallet? Maybe perhaps Hazlin can answer the first 2 about 2-factor authentication, other than 2-factor authentication, and whether it's also safe when you use SSL. Okay.
Thank you, Mas, and also thank you for the questions. Okay, there's a lot of ways for the authentication mechanism that can be used to ensure that the e-wallet is secure. Two-way authentication is one of ways that we can use. Okay, other than that, maybe we can use the phone features itself. I mean, some of the phones, they have a face recognition, right? So you can use that. And also, some of the banks or maybe some of the e-wallets implement tag number. Okay, so there's a lot of two-way multiple authentication that can be used other than biometrics. Okay, and maybe you can use a token, okay, for example, or maybe you can use right now we can use the SMS, the other channel that we can use to give a PIN number. Okay, but as we say just now, that users have to be vigilant. Okay, you have to make sure that whatever you do, okay, make sure that it is secured, and be careful of when you are going to do any transaction. Okay, with regards to the using public Wi-Fi and also the SSL question just now, okay, there's a there's a way, because our attacker is becoming more intelligent, more resourceful, okay, to get your data. So whatever it is, my advice is don't use public Wi-Fi when you want to use that to do any online transaction or financial transaction. Okay, I hope that's answered the question.
All right, thank you. Right, so there's also, thank you, Azlin. There's also a question about, I think one in the Q&A to say how to make e-wallet as part of business, especially for business process development. And there's also another question in chat, which is relevant to that, to say that it says, I prefer cashless. This is by Siti Noor. It is quite challenging because not all small businesses, traders adopt e-wallet payment. Do you have any suggestions on this in this situation? So maybe perhaps Uncle Liza, you can answer this. Maybe Boost could be the answer. How to get more small businesses to adopt digital wallets and also digital payment.
Definitely. I think thanks for the questions from the participants. As I mentioned just now, I think with Boost, not only that we have the consumer app, right, that serves the daily needs and the lifestyle of the consumer, but we are also aggressive in terms of what are the kind of solutions do we give our merchants, right? And our merchants are really focusing on the SME and micro SME merchants. There's definitely solutions that we can offer. The micro loans, I think the first step is let's register your business first, right, on Boost. And you can do that easily by going to myboost.com.my website. And there's a tab under Boost Business, and then you can register there. Alternatively, I can drop my email. Please send out to me directly. I'll get someone to assist you immediately after the call. We can take how do we take the business offline, once we get connected. Is that okay?
Right. I'm sure it's okay. So nanti Unku, for those who asked questions just now, you could actually drop your chat email to, then Unku Liza punya team will get connected with you. So that's another question which is quite interesting, and it's actually about, and I think this is something Chris and also Arushi can answer, because it talks about do you acknowledge the different generation gaps that might be might have an impact in their confidence with digital financial products and e-wallet? And because also there's a similar questions in the chat that says that with a gap in financial literacy amongst the older people, rural people. So these are the people that for me who wants to get in, but probably a bit feeling left behind or not technologically savvy to get online. How can e-wallet payment be fully implemented? So perhaps Chris and Arushi can share your experience from India and also Indonesia.
Okay, thanks, Maz. So definitely, I think there are different segments of population, and then their needs are very different. And to create that literacy, players are taking different approaches. So in India, when you talk about this generation, I'll take two examples. One in the rural atmosphere and one in the urban. So because even the elder people in these two areas are very different, demographically, their behavior and everything. So if we talk about the urban areas, and let's take the example of an Uber app, right? I'm sure a lot of us would have used or similar taxi aggregator apps. So what they have done for the older generation is launched a very light app for senior citizens, right? Without a lot of features added on, right? So they feel comfortable. They just log on to the app. The only thing they need to do is where do they need to go, and all of the fancy peripherals that are there in the app. You can chat, or you can put your light on, and the the driver can see you. They're not comfortable using all those things. They just want a basic app to call up the person, check where are you, where are they coming. So they make these kind of small tweaks and adaptations to the app for the person to feel comfortable. That's one part of, I think, making the customer comfortable, which players are doing, right? The other thing is in a more rural kind of a setup, what in fact the government is also trying to do, and what players are also trying to do, is figure out these local influencers, right? Because they have a big role to play. they live in small communities, and they have those local influencers who can talk to people and make them understand, which a third person, a wallet player coming in, or a government person coming in, may not be able to achieve. So then the government and the players, they work with these influencers to make them understand, to make the elderly understand what is in it for them, for using the app, how can they benefit out of it, right? And then all of the other things that I had mentioned, the regional languages and using more pictures and numbers, I think that goes a long way in helping these people.
Thank you, Arushi. Maybe Krisma can, tell us the last bit, because we really are running out of time now.
Yeah, so I think UI UX is very important. The experience, the interaction, it's a key. So it has to be really easy. It has to be as good as cash, as easy as cash, as fast as a cash, and minimize the risk. So people have to understand that using cash is more expensive. It's riskier. So when they see that, it's even more, now it's becoming more burdensome, because then you have to put cash in your wallet. So e-wallet is as good as cash. It's even faster. So in addition to what I said about bank and fintech, so when e-wallet is having that kind of role, so the role of the bank, it doesn't change. So for example, like I come from Dana, my company is Dana, which is an e-wallet in Indonesia. You can actually pay with your debit card in your e-wallet. So it's there. So then you don't need to top up, because top up is the same as cash, taking cash out of the ATM. So people have to understand that actually it is as good as cash. It's even better. So I think that kind of experience have to be experienced by all those people, including the older generation. So it will be assessed by the younger generation that you cannot deny that it's going to happen that way. However, that if they find that that's actually less risk and better using what do you call that, a digital wallet, then they will actually use it. So experience is key.
Thank you very much, Arushi, Krisma. Right. Thank you to all the panelists. We are really running out of time. It's almost 12 o'clock, and I thank the audience for submitting questions. I'm really sorry we couldn't take all of them, but I hope some of the things that we have discussed could actually answer your questions anyway. So again, thank you to all the panelists from this session. That I conclude that the digital wallet trend is here to stay. And then like what the panelists say is that digital wallet can entirely improve the entire customer experience. And if you are a business, it actually can help to keep your existing customer. It can entice new customer. It can raise your brand awareness, and you can also improve the way you interact with your audience and also with your user. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, thank you to the panelists, to WIEF, for inviting all of us for this valuable knowledge sharing platform, and for all of us to learn today. So till next time, have a great day, everyone. I pass the floor back to Vicky.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all our distinguished guests for being here today and making this webinar successful. Now, thank you to all. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. We truly hope that you have gained valuable inputs and ideas. Now, on behalf of WIEF Foundation, thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and have a great day ahead.